Hey, what's up? It's Theun, and today we had another alpha build. Unfortunately, still haven't seen any Resto Shaman changes. Still have hope that they're coming, because we have a long way to go. But I just wanted to give a list of the 10 most important changes I think that they could make to Resto Shaman heading into the War Within. And this won't be in any particular order, but I'm going to try and not ramble on for forever. So, number one, party or raid buff. This one's pretty self-explanatory. If every single spec in the game is going to bring something to the table and something beneficial that a group would want, then you can't just leave Resto and Ellie Shaman out and technically Death Knight. Especially when some specs, sorry if you hear the beep, that's my oven. But some specs bring multiple things and we're just left out in the dust. Number two is Deluge. Deluge is a talent point up here. It's not a very strong talent point. I don't really care about the throughput of it, but it's 2 talent points, and it's like it could be the second point that you spend. And especially after leveling on Remix, this was something that I definitely noticed. Is like that just feels so bad. Anyway, we overspend in our top section, so you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 would be what we spend in a raid setting minimum. Can sometimes add Overflowing Shores. And then in a Mythic Plus setting, you add Stormkeeper and 2 points of Vigor for a total of 13. So we overspend in the top section that only requires 8, compared to almost every other spec in the game, and it feels really bad. There's a lot of changes they can make up there, but the most important one, because Deluge is a mandatory thing to path through, just make this 1 talent point. Earth Shield, kind of a similar thing, but we spend 6 talent points on Earth Shield between our class and spec tree, and our spec tree, or class tree, sorry, has a lot of issues. I think it's too many issues to fix before the War Within, at least for Resto Shaman. You have you have to give up a ton of throughput in a Mythic Plus setting just to take all your mandatory stops. And in a raid setting, you only have 2 free talent points that don't offer throughput or a defensive benefit in some way to move around. So one way that they could barely make it better is to just remove Surging Shields. Elemental Orbit adds something cool. Earth and Harmony adds something cool. This just buffs the number, so you just bake that into the base spell instead. Number 4, cast time reductions. We have quite a few of them now. So we have Tidal Waves, Flash Flood, Spirit Walker's Tidal Totem, Tidebringer, and we're also getting one in the capstone of the Totemic Tree, at least currently. So cast time reductions don't stack well together. If you are unaware, basically bringing a cast below that of your GCD is sometimes nice, but increasing it further does almost nothing for you. So if you ever have Tidebringer and you drop Spirit Walker's Tidal Totem, it feels like shit because your GCD isn't finishing. So you cast the spell super, super quick, and then you just wait there until your GCD finishes, and then you can cast another one. So they can kind of knock out 2 birds with 1 stone here. We have a ton of cast time reductions, and haste is a bad stat for us, at least in terms of throughput. So you can just make some of these have hasted effects instead. It would increase the benefit of haste at least a little bit, and also remove the clunkiness that is like stacking these cast time reductions. Number 5, Wellspring is one of my favorite spells for Resto Shaman, but we haven't played it since they reworked it. So it used to be a spell that you only had to hit 6 players, and then that was like the cap. It would just split healing beyond that, which was cool. It was much easier to use. It's something where you want to hit quite a few players now, like as many as possible. So if you're in a mythic raid, you want to hit 20 players with it, and even so, it's not better than a chain heal right now. That's a tuning issue, but I think this just has a design problem. You shouldn't be forced to hit as many players as possible with a spell like this. It makes it way clunkier to play, and right now it has like a essentially 0% pick rate. The players that are playing this, I know who they are, and they just miss playing the spell. They talk about it in the communities all the time. So I think Wellspring just needs kind of an overhaul a bit to bring this spell back into favor. I don't think there's ever a situation where a random RNG proc should be better throughput than something that's like guaranteed in a raid setting. So, because it's also something that you wouldn't ever play in Mythic Plus. Downpour is kind of just tuning, but it's in our capstone section, and it has a 0% pick rate, and it has for all of Dragonflight. So it's just something that has kind of been ignored. There's not much that they can do for it, and if they got rid of it, I wouldn't hate the idea, but I just think something needs to happen to Downpour to make it better. I don't think it necessarily needs like redesigned, but it just needs to be a better spell. Primordial Wave is probably, it used to be Cloudburst that was the most complained about ability, and now that they buffed Healing Stream, it's by far Primordial Wave, and it's not close. So Primordial Wave kind of feels clunky, and especially as a new player, it's really hard to learn because all of the modifiers that affect it differently. So Undulation behaves differently than Unleash Life, which also behaves differently than like Master the Elements, for example. I have a giant write-up on how it works on the Wowhead guide. If you're curious, I'm not going to detail all that here, but I think all of the modifiers need to affect it the same way. Makes it far easier to learn. And if you talent into improved Primordial Wave, I don't think this needs to increase the throughput of it. I think this should just be a 1-point talent that just makes your Healing Wave instant. I think the reason it feels so good on Ellie and Enhance is the spells that you use, Lava Burst or Lightning Bolt, they're instant when you use them. And it makes it feel so much smoother to play. So I think they just need to remove the throughput from this node and just make it a giant quality of life increase for the spell. Additionally, they nerfed Primordial Wave by a good amount in Season 2, instead of just nerfing the Season 2 set bonus, which buffed it massively. So I think they should just, they need to look at Primordial Wave. But I do love the spell, and I want it to stay. It needs some help. Primal Tide Core is a cool spell. It's up against High Tide, which is like a monster of an ability. But I think it just needs a little bit of love. Like, it needs to be better at spreading Riptides. Every 4 Riptides isn't enough, I don't think. So either have it be like every 2 Riptides and they're like half duration or something. Or maybe it's still every 4 Riptides, but it does something else to Riptide to make it like a little bit better. It's missing like a little bit of oomph, and if you added that in, it would make the spell feel quite a bit better. Healing Rain, I don't think it has enough talent support on the tree. We only have these 3 talent points. You have Acid Rain, which is a great addition, but it only deals damage. So for healing, you only have these 2 talent points, and Overflowing Shores is kind of been undertuned, which is, I mean, that's a tuning issue that's easy to fix, but I think it needs a little bit of something else to spice it up a bit. Our Season 2 set bonus, Tidewaters, was actually really cool, and it added some additional Healing Rain throughput. So they could add in something, but there's a lot of different things that we've had in the past that increase Healing Rain. But I think it needs a little something to make it a little bit better. And finally is Chain Heal. Chain Heal is a problematic spell for the spec. So it's spammable. It is costly, but it baseline hits 4 players, and every single talent, like Ancestral Reach, adds an additional jump and more throughput. Unleash Life adds an additional jump and more throughput. Tidebringer makes it so that you essentially never miss the maximum amount of jumps on it. It's actually like stupidly overpowered. And then High Tide makes it have no fall off. So all of these talents essentially remove all of the downsides that Chain Heal has, and it just becomes this monster of an ability. But if you're playing a Riptide build, so you don't have any of these talents, Chain Heal's not worth pressing. The base spell is really weak, but all of the talents just buff it up by so much. And it's going to create a weird problem. So like the Farseer tree, for example. When you press Unleash Life, you summon an Ancestor, and what do you want to do after you press Unleash Life? Well, I'd like to press Chain Heal, because that makes my Ancestor also press a Chain Heal, right? Well, if I'm going to do that 4 times a minute, then why would I not just go ahead and take all the Chain Heal talents? Well, that locks in 4, 5 talent points, right? Instead, I think the balancing line that they need to hit is, okay, I'm going to play Farseer. I'm still going to press Unleash Life and the Chain Heal. That's fine. But I don't want to play the Chain Heal talents. I want to play the Riptide talents instead, because Farseer interacts with Riptide and stuff. So if I'm incentivized to play Primal Tide Core and Ancestral Awakening and Torrent and things like that, while still pressing Chain Heal, because the base spell is better, then that makes the spec so much healthier. So in my opinion, they need to remove a lot of the throughput that the talents offer, for Chain Heal in particular, and bake that into the base spell instead, so that you're incentivized to press it sometimes if you're playing non-Chain Heal builds, and it doesn't become some stupidly overpowered spell whenever you are playing Chain Heal builds. But doesn't overall change the throughput that much from where we're currently at. So those are the 10 most important changes. A couple of like wants, I guess, is buff tracking for High Tide and Undulation. These are really annoying and require super complex weak auras that are just commonly used by the community. I think anytime you are required to use weak auras for something, that's something that needs looked at, and these are the two for Resto Shaman. And finally, Lava Surge is like a quality of life increase that I didn't realize how much I missed. It's not a big DPS increase. It's obviously not an HPS increase, but it's something that when you are trying to add in damage, this is one of those like feel good talents that you really miss. And we don't have enough talent points to spend to grab it. I don't know how they fix that. Maybe removing some bloat from the top allows us to do that. But I really want to be able to play Lava Surge again. It's something that I think makes the spec feel quite a bit better whenever you're really trying to min-max the spec. So anyway, hopefully I didn't ramble on for too long. These are the 10 most important changes I think the spec needs. And like I said earlier, I think our class tree needs a lot of love, but I'm not confident that they're going to be able to do that before the War Within launches. So that's something that I'm kind of hanging on for later. But if they could, all the power to them. So anyway, that's it for today, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.